Hello, this is David Baumblatt from Terabint Leadership. Welcome to the program. Today, we're going to be talking about Americans leaving America. Obviously, myself, I've got personal experience, something that I should talk about, and it goes again into why America is going to go into collapse. When I grew up, probably similar to you, most of the time people are coming into America. And there's no doubt, I still believe America is a great, I was about to say company. It's basically what it is. It's a corporation, but it's in decline. There's no doubt about it. I mean, even Donald Trump, if you're a supporter of Donald Trump, what was his slogan? Make America great again. Even he's acknowledging, and if you have common sense, you realize that the best days of America are behind us. Now, there's a lot of MAGA who are believing, no, Trump is going to change it. The best days were behind us. Then we got really bad, and it's all because of the Democrats. Remember, it's always the Democrats' faults. Nobody wants to talk about the global corporations because both parties work for them. So then there was a slump, and now MAGA believes that the future is going to look A-OK for America. I just don't think so. What happens is, as an empire starts collapsing, it's the same thing with a body. When a body's in the last struggles of life, it jerks, it flexes, and it does a lot of these impulses to stay alive again. That's what we're seeing here. We're seeing this jerky pull of an American empire struggling to remain in power. The best days are behind us, is what it is. China's best days, even though China in the past had a great, you could say, empire, but China's growing and we're declining. Don't think so? We'll see where it is. So one thing I should say is, when I grew up, I never had an inclination to leave America, except normally if you wanted to go on a vacation or whatever. But like I said, it wasn't until 2005 is when I said, this is not looking good. In 2010, I left. And a lot of people are realizing, what do we do, David? And I keep saying, the political solution in Washington, D.C. is over. It's over, people. America first is a day late and a dollar short. You're generally going to be faced with two choices. You're going to have to leave this sinking ship. 3, you're just going to get off the grid in America, find a country home, live a self-reliant life on a farm and just wait out the storm. Or you need to get involved in politics, but it's going to be at the state level. And part of that is you're going to push for secession because there's no changing Washington, D.C., not going to be it. So anyway, let's go through some news, but there's pretty interesting about how more and more Americans are leaving America. I don't think typical Americans realize how bad this is. And I also like to point out is most Americans who say something like, I was born in America, I was raised here, I'm never going to leave. Well, you can't really. Most people, it's a little bit of a rich man's game. I'm not saying you have to be rich, but you do have to be resources. I mean, I don't want to do a complicated analogy, but it's similar to the person that says, I'm a peaceful person. I don't believe in any violence. Unless you're capable of doing violence, then you're not a peaceful person. A peaceful person is someone, this is the cliche of martial arts, where someone trains and they are able to do a significant amount of violence with their own capability, but they restrain themselves for a higher good or higher order. Hence, they could be considered the peaceful warrior. But you have to be able to do violence before you could say you're a peaceful person. How does that relate to the Americans leaving? Well, if you don't have the resources to leave to begin with, then it doesn't really matter this part of, I'll never leave America. Well, you can't, okay? And what you're finding is the people that can, oh, they're increasing it. And I can tell you from personal experience, wasn't that I was rich, I was single. That helps out a lot. No wife, no kids. But it's not easy, people. It's not easy at all, especially as you get older, you have a family, you better have money. So anyway, let's make that point. You'll see a lot of Americans like, I was born in America, I'm never leave. Well, remember, if our forefathers had that attitude, then probably they would have never left Europe, never would have found America. Anyway, let's go through some news here. And then we'll get into today's subject. This is kind of how I view Donald Trump. This is MAGA. I mean, look what this statement is. Not saying I don't know much about Massey. I mean, I was generally a supporter of him. I don't know much about this stuff. Like I said, the country's going to go down. But are you kidding me with this APEC? Does anyone not? When I think of who has foreign influence in America, the first country that comes to my mind is not Russia and it's not China. The first country is actually Israel, but we're just so used to it now. I think either we don't realize it, we don't care, or probably maybe there's nothing we can do about it. Maybe that. Anyway, let's go on to this. This is just an interesting leadership deal. Let me make sure everyone can see this. Yeah, because someone else has asked me to do an interview for me. Anyway, this is Joe Pags. Sorry, he's a piece of shit, and I'll explain why. So I made the statement, MAGA is falling apart. It really is. And there's a lot of fake patriots out there. They say they support military, they don't. So Joe wants to act like a tough guy here. Joe's never served in the military. Joe cares more about China. His daughter's Chinese, by the way. He cares more about Chinese people than American citizens or military veterans. Don't think so. So Joe gets on here like a tough guy. I'm MAGA. Oh, it's falling apart. I got whistleblowers. All right, Joe. So what did I ask Joe? Again, we're going on. But again, this comes back to leadership. I said, Joe, I don't even need to be a guest on your program. It would help. But I said, really, the number one thing you could help me, Joe, is I assume maybe you have an email, or maybe you have a connection to a politician, or maybe even staff of email, maybe I CC you, please, and let's push it to politicians. If that doesn't work, I'd be happy to be a guest on your show. But I said, if nonetheless, just repost my typical X thing. Just repost, that's it. And we went back and forth. And he was very unprofessional with me too. Unbelievable. I just said, then just repost, Joe. And at the end of the day, he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. You're a piece of shit, Joe, because I could tell you something. I don't have a problem if you do not support military veterans. I think you're smart. I mean, I think this same phrase of thank you for your service to military veterans is in some way similar to diversity is our strength. We just repeat it for propaganda. Really, how's the military? Now, there are ways you could thank people, or meaning significant. For instance, if you're ICE and your job is to deport illegal immigrants, I could thank you for your service. I'm happy with your taxpayer money. And if that person looks at me and says, what have I done for you? Well, why are you thanking me? Well, you're deporting illegal immigrants. They pose a danger to society. They pose an economic burden to society. They culturally don't fit in, and it's the wrong thing. We're being invaded. They're not welcome. Thank you for kicking them out. Or, again, I believe law enforcement needs to be defunded, many times by 50%, but not border security. And even though if you do that click right there, that I sent a web link, that's about my interactions with Customs and Border Patrol. But truth be told, it wasn't from them. They were taking orders from the FBI. So another story. But anyway, if you are Coast Guard and Border Patrol, yeah, thank you for your service. So anyway, if you don't thank military veterans for their service, I have zero problem with you. In fact, I respect you. But if you want to be a tough guy, Joe, propaganda, and say, I thank military veterans for their service, and you cannot even press repost to a military veteran in terms of reporting government corruption, then you're basically a grifter. You're just fake. And so I say that because then all of a sudden this person shows up. I don't know this person. I'm going to take her up on her offer, though. 1 second. Hopefully everyone can see her. 1 second. Let me bring this down. I don't know who she is. She just so it's interesting. So I did a new post on here. I don't know if you're going to see it. Anyway, her name is Dr. Margaret Show. I think she's like a medical doctor that maybe is more like holistic medicine. I don't know. But she's like, hey, I support your cause, this and that. She's like, get on my show. And so I sent her an email, and maybe we'll get on her show. But either way, thank you so much. But you don't even, what I'm finding too, let me just say this. I am finding more and more of these MAGA people to be pretty fake. And like I said, if you don't support military veterans, I am not going to argue with it at all. In fact, I think you have common sense. But if you're going to say, I support military veterans, then don't be some like communist propaganda just repeating stuff like diversity is our strength. Military veteran, government corruption report. At the very least, you repost. That's the rules. Yes, that's how it is. Don't think so? Then don't say you support. We don't have this anymore. None of this leadership is taught anymore. It's not taught in our government, not taught at West Point, probably not even taught in our homes. Why? Because we don't have fathers anymore. But yeah, that's what supporting a military veteran is. So if you do it, yeah, then I appreciate your support. If you don't support military veterans, I got no problem with you on that. Anyway, let's go to a couple more things. This one is interesting. Let me make sure everyone can see this. Computer slow. Hopefully this thing doesn't stall. Anyway, look at this whole thing in Germany. It's everywhere in Europe. Look at Syria. Syria rejected Germany. I mean, I even said, let me just say a couple parts here, and then we'll end it. Merkel will probably go down as probably one of the worst chancellors in the history of Germany. I still remember 2015, I was in Beijing talking with these dumb Germans, really dumb cuck Germans, saying it's going to be a complete disaster with these immigrants. And it's usually all comes down to, this is what happens when you have women in leadership or weak men. So I want to make that point about the Syrians, because in Hong Kong, I ran into it's a bit of an expat community in Hong Kong. And I met an Iranian woman. She got a PhD from the UK, and she's living here. We just met. And so, and it might be with the interview with the doctor, if she gets this active video now is doing, hopefully, so now it's coming down low. Hopefully everyone, we'll keep going. If the video blacks out, it blacks out. So I see Merkel destroy. Yeah, I see Mighty Magatron. Merkel will probably go down as probably one of the worst chancellors in history. Anyway, let me keep talking. Hopefully the video keeps going. So I met this Iranian woman, but it's kind of like I just mentioned about maybe when the doctor, I have an interview with her. There's times where we could agree on certain things, but maybe disagree on other things. There's no doubt about it. Some of the stuff that I say about race and about gender is what it is. I mean, China's changed me. So anyway, this was the point about this Iranian woman. First, she's like, oh, you're former military. She made assumptions. But I was like, listen, first is, I'm totally against this war in Iran. And I said, Trump is disappointing me harshly. So she's like, yeah, you're an ally. And I say, yeah, but I get, from an Iranian woman. But I said, I'm also telling you, this multiracialism, multiculturalism, feminism that's going on in the West and America, no way, totally wrong. And I said, at the end of the day, generally speaking, Iranians belong in Iran and they're not Europeans, and Europeans belong in the West. I'm not saying it has to go down to the deadline like that. But what I'm not saying is now, again, what we're trying to do is, where do you agree and disagree with these political issues? But I still say that one of the major problems that's happening in the West is the white man is being walked all over by women, racial minorities, and immigrants. It is what it is. But at the same time, nationalism, you could totally disagree with these wars that Trump is doing. If you think these wars are going to be great, have fun. And you think I'm wrong, let's go to today's video, because I could tell you something more. We're going to watch this video kick, and I'm going to tell you, because I don't think you understand how important this is. But let's go.
And citizenships for the same reason they diversify stock portfolios, to hedge.
1 second.
Ultra-rich Americans are collecting multiple residencies and citizenships for the same reason they diversify stock portfolios, to hedge against risk in an unpredictable world, investment migration experts tell Forbes. The U.S. has replaced China as the largest market for clients seeking.
We're going to talk about that point. I don't think people realize how big that is.
Secondary or tertiary citizenship. Eric Major, CEO and chairman of the investment migration advisory firm Latitude World, told Forbes. More than 6 in 10 Americans earning over $200,000 annually are considering moving to another country within 5 years, according to a study to be released next month from Apex Capital Partners, an advisory firm that helps people secure foreign residency and citizenship. Nuri Katz, who serves as the president of Apex Capital Partners, told Forbes that American interest is expanding at an exponential rate. He further observed that the survey's participants were evenly split, with 50% identifying as left-leaning and 50% as right-leaning. Henley and Partners.
So again, as we said, it's about 50-50, the left and the right, which I keep saying, especially the far left and the far right, we are not as much enemies as you think we are.
Reported inquiries from U.S. nationals seeking alternative residence. or citizenship increased 183% year over year in the first quarter of 2025 after President Trump was elected to a second term. For the first time since the Great Depression, more people left the U.S. than moved there in 2025, the Wall Street Journal reported. While the Trump administration hails negative net migration as a success story of deportations and restrictive visas, Americans' own citizens are also leaving in record numbers. The number of Americans applying for citizenship through Ancestry in Europe and Canada has also risen significantly. Americans whose family trees have roots in other countries are, quote, grabbing citizenship by descent into Canada and into Europe, Major told Forbes, noting his firm always advises exploring this option first. The number of Americans seeking Irish citizenship through Ancestry, a route for people with Irish parents or grandparents, jumped 63% last year. And after Canada removed generational limits for those seeking dual citizenship, more Americans have reportedly applied for Canadian citizenship than the next 9 source countries combined. For ultra-high net worth American clients with about $100 million in investable assets, New Zealand has become a popular choice, Major told Forbes. Of the country, Major said it's, quote, English-speaking, other side of the world. If World War III was to break out, it's a pretty good place to be hanging out. For more on this story, check out the article at the link in the description.
Yeah, I had an American buddy. He chose New Zealand. So I keep saying, if you're rich, and we're going to get into it, if you're rich, you do what you want. But if you're not rich, you got to kind of pick and choose what you could do. It's expensive. So he was able to get New Zealand citizenship. He did his undergraduate in America, and he decided to do graduate school in New Zealand. And I think with graduate school, so he did it by naturalization. And I think it was about 5 years. Obviously, the good thing is you don't have to learn a foreign language. It's English. And he is a New Zealand citizen. And he specifically chose New Zealand for many reasons. You know, it is a Western country. They speak English. It's beautiful down there. But he did say it's kind of, it feels safe and secluded. And if there's a World War III, so everyone's got their own reasons. Again, I picked China for 2 reasons. I could already speak Chinese. And at Harvard, in terms of economics, it was huge. And we're going to talk about this right now about citizenship for investment in China and how much it's changed. So in China, it was really cool. And so what I do say is we'll do a video again of where I recommend. I don't recommend people going to China. If you're a Chinese American, that's a different story. Now, if you're going to go to Taiwan or Hong Kong or Macau's cool too. I got some buddies in there working in the gambling. Those are cool. Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Macau are still cool. China's just changed. Let's just say that. And if you're not ethnically Chinese, it's different. But anyway, let me get to this story. In China, especially as a white guy, you're always getting recruited for other jobs. Like you're always doing part-time jobs. It just is like one job. I never did it. It wasn't my interest, but like an English teacher, especially if you're white, from the West, speak fluent English, you're always getting recruited for English teachers. So not my thing. But I did get recruited for this job, and I did it. The money was good, but I got to admit, even when I was doing it, I realized I don't think this is right. And so remember Donald Trump's golden visa? Yeah, he didn't invent that out of the blue. All Donald Trump did was take a program that I worked under called EB-5, and he basically just made it more expensive and more direct. And the reason, even in China, I didn't like it. So I would actually be working for American private equity firms that would be selling American citizenships to the Chinese. So even that on paper, I thought, what gives them the right to sell American citizenships? Even Donald Trump, I mean, really? So don't you think American people should get a vote on it? So anyway, but let's go back to the story. It was called EB-5. And it's about $500,000 to do this. And the Chinese were the number one consumer of what's called citizenship by investment to America. Then you had Russians, you had Indians, you had all these people, and they were flocked. It was huge. They're not. Now, I'm not saying rich Chinese are still not leaving China, but they're not going to America. And what's interesting, they are changing their mind on Asia. For instance, Singapore is a huge boom. Interesting enough, Japan, as much as they say bad stuff about Japan, the Chinese like Japan. They like to go there, raise their kid, or they'll go to Malaysia, or if they go to Western countries, because again, there's these political issues. I mean, we're basically at a Cold War. When I first went to China in 2010, it wasn't that Cold War. But now there's a Cold War. So if the Chinese want to immigrate to a Western country, they'll choose Australia, New Zealand, Canada, maybe the UK. But in America now, it's not really a big deal. But I ask you, I mean, I don't know how old you are, but when I grew up, Americans leaving America, besides going on vacation, I just never really heard about it that much. It just wasn't a thing. And like I said, when I left in 2010, the most of the expats that I ran into were ones that just wanted adventure, or maybe they were just sick and tired of America, like almost bored, but not to the point they're like, oh my God, America's going to collapse. It's changing. People know it. They said this ship is sinking. So you're telling me right now that the largest consumers of overseas investment for citizenships are Americans? That's an alarm bell. And also remember, these statistics don't count Americans that have moved abroad and have not yet renounced their citizenship or gotten a new citizenship. They're on some type of visa, maybe even a permanent. Those statistics aren't tracked, but I'm seeing it. It's so obvious more and more. And before we go on to the next video, but I still think it almost reminds me of communist propaganda like North Korea. I cannot tell you how many, and these are MAGA people. When I'm on X saying I need help, fuck you. You left America, traitor. And I thought, are we in North Korea? Is that against the rules to leave America? So we're not allowed to leave. But these are the people who love legal immigration because they don't want to be called racist. But it's the weirdest thing. In fact, I know another West Pointer. He left America and he gave up his American citizenship because he was tired of paying taxes. The American citizenship is a very unique citizenship where you have to pay taxes globally no matter where you are. It's a raw deal. Other citizenships not. So if you're, we'll say, a Canadian, if you leave Canada, I mean, if there's a Canadian on it, tell me if there, but I'm pretty sure if you leave Canada and you're in another country, you don't pay taxes anymore to Canada. You'll pay taxes to whatever country you're living in. Not so in America. And so he gave up, this is a West Pointer, he gave up his American citizenship because he was like me. He's like, I'm never going back to America. I'm done with it. And he literally bought, it's expensive. I think it was about 200,000 US dollars. He bought one of these Caribbean. I'm very familiar with these citizenship programs by now, because again, I know a lot of Americans who've done this. But he ended up buying a Caribbean citizenship, and he lives overseas. He's like, I'm not going back to America, and you think I'm going to pay American taxes for the rest of my life living overseas? Ain't going to happen. So what I also want to do is I don't want to speak so negatively about it, but there is a retardedness in America that says America is the best country on earth. Nothing's better. How do you know? Have you lived in other countries? Now, it is true. America is a first-tier country, and it is hard to compete against America, but it's getting easier as America's fallen. So you don't see many Americans, like I said, living in Africa saying, oh, Africa is better than America. But the thought that nothing's better, and I could tell you, if I never return to America the rest of my life again, that's fine. That wasn't the issue with these allegations. Now, I have a constitutional right to return to America. Maybe there's a business trip I've got to do, a funeral that I need to see with my family. That's my constitutional right. I'd like to take that. But I never really planned on returning to America. But even at the end of the day, if I'm never able to return to America ever again for the rest of my life, I'm fine. It's more about leave me alone overseas. But there is this propaganda in Americans' mind. They're like, nothing's better than America, man. If you leave, you're crazy or you're a traitor. It's very strange how they're talking about that. Anyway, let's just do this one quick video. And then, well, what you're going to see too is more and more strange stories of people leaving America getting citizenships that you'd be very surprised. Here's the mayor of New York City. You think this is just by chance? I predicted this before. There's going to be a time where you are going to see American elites, meaning this could be politicians, this could be business people, and they have, I'm not saying they're corrupt, probably they are, but then the government's corrupt because we're turning it authoritarian, and they have fled America. I didn't flee America. In 2010, I wasn't running from the law. I just left. But you are going to see politicians and elite business people, they're going to flee America because they're running from the law. So in this case, is this possibly a plan B for this? Could be. This is the mayor of New York City, or the former mayor.
And an Albanian passport today.
One second.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams received Albanian citizenship and an Albanian passport.
It might be hard to hear. So this is Mayor Eric Adams. This is the former mayor of New York City. And he was gifted citizenship in the country of Albania. Now, some of you might say, I don't want to go to the country Albania. Well, if you got to flee America, people don't understand how hard it is to get citizenships. It's very difficult. It's turning into a luxury item for the rich. Here's the mayor of New York City getting a passport and citizenship to a foreign country. You think this is just out of the blue? No way. This is his plan B.
Today, the country's president signed a decree granting the honor after the former mayor submitted a request. Adams says he's proud to receive the honor, but didn't exactly explain why he sought it out.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a reason. Anyway, a quick snippet. If you're a Canadian, this is interesting. Or if you're an American one, a lot of Americans are thinking about going to Canada. And I mentioned this too. If you're an American and you go to another Western country, it's about a 50-50. I think it's getting better, but it just seems, I still think for every Canadian or Australian or Briton or German that says, screw this, I'm moving to America, there could be the vice versa. I do think it's changing though. You're going to see a new Europe. I predicted this. You're hearing what's happening in NATO. So I'm not going to go off the bandwagon that says, yeah, Americans are leaving America, they're going to Canada. Because some of the Canadians are like, dude, we have very similar problems here. So again, if you go to another Western country, don't be surprised that there are these similar problems that are happening to America. The difference is America is the global empire. There's only one direction for America. It's going down. You are going to see a rise, like in Europe. I would not be surprised if the European Union collapses, but it could be a good thing. Europe may rise though. But anyway, this is for the Canadians in the room.
Prompting immigration lawyers on both sides of the border to report a surge in applications. So I want to bring in CBC News reporter Mark Carcasole. Mark, great to be with you. Can you explain this new law and how it works?
Yeah, Liz, so essentially this came into effect on December 15th, just the end of last year. And what it does is it's a pretty significant change from what we had in place before. Previously, parents could only pass citizenship down one generation to their kids. This new law passed by the government before the end of last year has opened up citizenship to anyone who can prove essentially that they have Canadian ancestry in your bloodline. It doesn't have to be your parents. It could go back to your great-grandparents or even further back than that. The catch is that you just have to prove it. Individuals born outside of Canada before this law was passed, December 15th, 2025, must show that they have a Canadian parent or some sort of ancestor who became a Canadian citizen on or after January 1st, 1947, or specific to the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, which joined Canada in April 1st, 1949. You can utilize that date as well. As you mentioned, this opens up the window to several potential American people to move over. Now, I've seen online a lot of talk. It's mostly done in the context of celebrities. There's been a lot of talk that perhaps Beyonce, because she has some relatives way back, could automatically become Canadian, or Timothy Chalamet or Madonna. That's not the case at all. There are very strict guidelines to that. Some applicants may have to trace their bloodlines back several generations to prove that they would qualify. You have to provide documents to prove that your ancestor was Canadian within the specific guidelines, and that you are directly related through each generation. But as you mentioned, immigration lawyers are already finding themselves swamped with applications on both sides of the border. People who are actually maybe just curious about.
anyway, we don't need to see the whole video, but going to Canada. There's something else too. These would be a lot of guys too leaving the West per se, and that's the girl situation. I'm going to give you an example, and I'm not doing this to be mean at all, but I was shocked. So I'm interested, obviously, in white women. I didn't go to Asia for the Asian women. They're fun, though. I'll tell you, Asian women are really fun, and they treat white men really nice. But I've always been more into white women, and I'm not really a big fan of mixed kids. So sometimes I do get on these dating apps. Now, the good thing is Hong Kong, you do get a good supply of expats, which was one of the reasons I liked Hong Kong over mainland China, similar like Singapore. But I'm on this dating app, and this dating app also allows me to go to different countries. And I started doing it. I said, oh, let me go to different countries. I'm looking specifically for white women. And then I go to America. Now, this is going to sound very sensitive, and I'm not doing this for clickbait or to be cool. But I was shocked. And when I looked at American women, the biggest thing I noticed, because I was looking especially Eastern European women, and then there's also, you could say, white women sometimes in South America, or even white women in Western Europe. But when I got to American women, I was blown away on how many fat American women there are. So I'm looking at their pictures, and I was like, maybe this is just an odd sort of thing. And I stayed on it for hours and hours. I stayed on it for a couple weeks. I stayed in America because I want to make sure maybe this was just an odd batch of women. And I was like, it was unbelievably how fat these American women are. And I'm telling you, the American women, this is a health notice for you. This is part of it is attraction, but part of it, who knows, diabetes. And I do feel sorry for Americans because I think your food is being poisoned. I keep saying that the American man, we can talk about the American man too, but still, I keep saying the American man's not the same with testosterone. I don't know if it's plastics in the food, GMOs, fast food. I would say though, the number one is you're not getting enough exercise. I think the food that Americans are eating, the beverages, the water, the chemicals, the drugs, the pharmaceutical drugs, the over-the-counter drugs, I mean, you name it. It is not doing a very good job for our health. But I am not doing this for clickbait, and I know it's sensitive to American women, but when you're overseas, you could see stuff more clearly. But I was like, I've never seen something. I kept going, and then I switched it. I went to, especially if you go to Eastern Europe, like the Eastern European women, it was drastic, the difference. And I've always been more into, again, Western European women. These would be Americans, Canadians, Australians. That's our forefathers, but holy moly, but more so in America, less so in Western Europe. So I was looking at British girls and German girls and French girls. Not so bad. But when I got to America, it was just like fat girl, fat girl, fat girl, young girl, fat girl, old girl, fat girl, that something's going on. I'm telling you, it was just unbelievable. So anyway, let's go to this. One of the reasons that men are leaving, though, is the women, because I'm telling you, I've said many times, forget about racial minorities walking over white men. Forget about immigrants walking over white men. I'm telling you, women just treat, and then this is where a lot of men, you know what it reminds me too? People look at me like, you left, you abandoned us when I left America. It almost sounds like I'm your father, like you're yelling at me, like, Dad, you abandoned us in America. Like if I was in America and I'm a homeless military veteran, you would have done any help for me. Stop bullshitting yourself. But you see this thing with these guys going MGTOW, going their own way. And women get angry. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you abandoning us? I don't know. Maybe you don't give a shit about us. But like I said, I really miss white women, but I don't miss their culture at all. This feminism is horrible. I don't think white women realize how disrespectful they are to white men and how much white men have spoiled them. Because you don't see many white women thinking, God, I really want to leave America and go to Africa. I want to go to Asia. I want to go to the Middle East. Not really happening so much. Anyway, let's talk about this video. But this guy, I could get what he's talking about.
2100. We are giving you money because veterans are meant to be protected. What's your disability check per month?
$2,100.
We are giving you money because veterans are meant to be protected. But either way, he's tired of the BS in America and plans to leave the country.
Yep.
What's the BS you're escaping?
I'm honestly tired of women. I've struggled with dating over here.
I mean, you told Colton you're annoyed with the boss bitch movement. I don't even know what the that is.
Basically, the women who only date men that have like a 6-figure income and stuff like that.
Okay, well, you're like at a 0-figure income.
I know.
It's the 6-figure, 6 feet, 6-pack or something? I don't remember. What was it?
Basically, yeah.
Okay, well, are you tall?
No, I'm 5'5".
Oh.
So I think most people would agree it's brutal. As much as women say, and many times you'd be surprised in the American women, men don't really need you. Most men think you're overly sexualized. Now, we don't want fat women, but a lot of women are like, there's so many standards that men have for us. I actually think women have much higher standards for men in the West than the opposite. If you go, now, of course, I know a lot more about Asia. I know stories about guys in India and Africa. I would not want to live in India or Africa, but they can have fun. But you do find white men liking Asia. And I could tell you something. You come to Asia, that guy right there, you're a short, fat, broke man, you'll do fine. You'll do fine, I'm telling you. But so the part is with the white women, I really miss you, but I don't miss your culture at all. I mean, I'm telling you, there's no doubt in my mind. How is my experience? Because I probably had a lot of experience with two types of women, white women and Asian women. I've always preferred, my ex-wife was white. I've always preferred white women. But Asian women treat me, oh my God, so much better. I mean, I just don't want to have mixed kids with them, but I'll show you this video. These girls are the gookiest, cutest, fun girls to be with. Again, not interested in having mixed kids with them, but I'm telling you, I always tell the guys, what do I think about Asian girls? 3 things. Fun, fun, fun. The video's going so slow. I can't explain it. They are some of the most chinky, cookie girls. They're really fun. But like I said, I just wouldn't advise having mixed kids with them. But there's no doubt about it. They treat white guys really good. Anyway, here's another guy one of the reasons I have seen, particularly from men, they are leaving because the women thing. Now, that's not about collapse, but it does go into you destroy the father, you destroy the family. You're not making it does add to a collapse. There's no doubt about it. There is a war between men and women. It was brought on by the corporations. Some people say it was brought on by the Jews. I'm not going to defend that. But anyway, there is a war to break up the family, kill the father. And if people aren't having families and children, well, that's a reason for collapse. But yeah, guys, particularly guys are leaving because they're tired of the girls. Here's another guy.
It's more that I will never date a Western woman again, and it's not because I'm not attracted physically to Western women. It's more that I do not like their attitudes. I do not like the cultural programming that Western women have. And if you're a Western woman, it's nothing against you. This is just personal preference. What I like about Asian women, specifically Indonesian women, because I've been with my girlfriend for 2 years now, is I like how they put their man first. I like how they want to look after you. You don't have to ask them to look after you. They actually want to look after you. I like how they're more traditional in their roles. They want to have a family. They don't want to put a career before anything. They want you to be a man. They want you to provide. They want you to protect them. And I feel like that empowers me to be the best version of myself. Again, no shade to Western women. I personally prefer Indonesian and Asian women more in their attitudes. And I think a lot of men are realizing this, and that's why they're moving to Asia.
Yeah, like I said, I definitely appreciate the white woman's DNA. I don't like the culture, though. I mean, the relationship that I have with Asian women, oh my God, if people would see it in the way, they would freak out, like politically incorrect. It is what it is. I'm the white man and I'm the king. And she worships the white man. Get the fuck out. But I do believe, and I said this, and this be interesting to have a medical doctor who studies genetics and the genomes, because I do believe it could change. And I'm telling you, the same reason I said about American men, I believe the DNA of the American man has changed over the last 100 years, like their testosterone, everything, the plastics in our food. And that's another thing too. Once you leave America, you realize that we in Europe, in Asia, they don't consume as many of these drugs. Everyone's popping pills, over-the-counter drugs. So again, plastic, it's affecting the DNA of both men and women. I'm telling you, it's a real danger. But I'm telling you, when I was on the dating app and I could change my location to America, I literally stayed on there for 2 weeks because I thought this just might be like, maybe I'm just looking at a certain segment of American women that just happen to be really fat in maybe this certain city. So I wanted to go through it, and it was so obvious. And you might say, yeah, but you're comparing them to Asian women. And it is true. Asian women are more petite. We get that. But I'm telling you, because I wasn't looking for Asian women. Why? Because I'm in Asia. It's not very difficult to find Asian women. I was specifically trying to find white women. So I was going to Eastern Europe, where you could see they look different. And even though Western European women, so these would be girls from Denmark and the Netherlands, and I could search by race. So I was only searching for white women. But when I got to America, and I'm like, how many women was I mean, it could have been over thousands, because I was just like, boom, 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 boom. And it was, we're not talking a lot of these women just like mildly, how they say it just got a little bit of fat. We're talking like fucking, these women were disgustingly fat. I mean, it was like 50%. Then you had other women that it was obviously, you're overweight. Like, you're not disgustingly fat, but you're overweight. Like, it's a health issue and it's not attractive. You need to lose weight. But then the disgustingly fat women, I'm like, they have to have medical issues. And are you fucking kidding me? A man is not going to get you. To the women, this is where you can accuse men of being superficial. If you are really grotesquely fat, it's going to take the hand of God to push your personality for the man to say, I'll look past you being grotesquely fat. It's different. Like I said, it was so fat, these girls. But anyway, after living in Asia, it's amazing. It's just the difference you can't take. Anyway, so let's look at one thing. Now, don't fool yourself. One of the reasons people are leaving, and I'd say more, is our economy is going to get worse. And I hear that all the time. This is just a quick video of people living in trailer parks. This is not remember, the American dream, and I'm going to do the next video on the corporations. The top 1% continues to get richer and richer. And what happens to the rest of Americans? They can't even afford houses. This is Americans living in trailer parks. This is not the American dream anymore. It's turning into the American dream, believe it or not, people wanting to leave America. It's going to get dangerous.
It actually has a queen size bed outside light on. And it actually has a queen size bed, which is hard to believe.
For Gus Francis, this is home. A 20-year-old camper he bought for $5,000, parked in an RV lot in Graysville, Tennessee, just north of Chattanooga.
I got all my rosaries for protection everywhere. Books.
Now retired, he worked for decades as a commercial diver and hoped to live closer to his widowed mother. But when he sought a more conventional home,
I just can't see how people with a normal job making $15 an hour can afford an apartment without multiple roommates.
Are you able to use this for now or no?
No, I don't use it at all. I eat a lot of soup.
Yeah, soup is great.
meals are made in the microwave, the stove unused for fear of a gas leak. Right next door is Debbie Williams.
welcome to my house. Over here's the grandkids, see?
Oh, cute, yeah.
And that's Seven's
The littlest one.
Yeah.
She sold her house in Kentucky to be closer to her grandchildren. But housing prices near Chattanooga increased by almost 50% since 2020.
Apartments are like about $1,200 a month, but then you got your utilities to pay. This is permanent. Plus, it it's like $550 a month, includes electric, water.
So you're saving over
and
50%.
Trash too, everything. It includes everything.
Debbie works nights, helping adults with disabilities and
Yeah, I don't even want to see the rest of it. It's just sad. This is sort of also military leadership where I get it. If you go into the military, you'll realize like the officers that I was, and then obviously the higher ranking generals, they live a better life. We have more money. But the difference in the military is not even close as it is in the civilian corporate world. In the corporate world, it's exponential. I mean, we're talking millions upon millions of dollars the CEO and the C-suite has. And then you get down to the workers. Some of these workers don't even have money for medical care. It's too much. This is not the system, and it's going to get worse. But this is one of the reasons people are leaving. And definitely, too, I see it a lot in Asia. Because as an American, a lot of these white guys, especially you go to Southeast Asia, your money can go far. So that is definitely one of the reasons, too, why Americans are leaving. The cost of living is too much. They're tired of the rat race, the cost of living, and they're like, screw it. I'm going to live on the beach in Vietnam or in Thailand. And it's an interesting life. I mean, what I say from leadership is in order to have the experience to compare and contrast, well, then you need to have experience of two. And if you've only lived in America your whole life, and you say America is the best country on earth, how do you know? So that's why, and there's no doubt about it, by me leaving America, the government, it's able me to look and see what is good and what is bad. But I have seen the overall trend is America's getting worse, not for the top 1%. The top 1%, it gets better and better and better. And Donald Trump, who ran as a nationalist, he's still going by the typical globalist handbook where him and his rich kids, there's going to be a video I'll show you on next time, but the amount of economic, financial insider corruption by Trump and his family is probably off the record books. It's off the record books. I've never been a defender of the Democrats, but this system we all know in America is the top 1% continue to get richer, and the rest of us continue to get harder and harder to make financial ends meet. Well, then that system's not going to last. It's going to collapse. But that is one of the reasons people are leaving. Now, for this person, this is NVIDIA. I think his name's Jensen Huang. What's interesting is we'll show this video and I'll see it. You've got to be very careful because all these people that say he's an American, all these people have an exit strategy. If Jensen Huang, if America doesn't go very well, oh, he's off to China and Taiwan. Not you, because you're whitey. You're not going to be allowed. Be very careful, these people. I'm going to do a quick story on them.
Number one point. Do you agree? And we're doing everything we can to do that.
But how is shipping chips to China keeping the U.S.
No.
if they're bottlenecked on compute?
We got Vera Rubin for United States. Am I in United States? Do you consider me part of the United States?
Yes.
He's worried when he said that because even himself, he knows that he's Chinese. That's why he's got to ask the question. Do you consider me American? Why would you even ask that question, Jensen? Well, because I'm Chinese. Well, then you probably answered it. You're Chinese first.
NVIDIA. You consider NVIDIA a United States company? Okay. Number one, why is it that we don't come up with a regulation that's more balanced so that NVIDIA can win around the world instead of giving up the world? Why would you want United States to give up the world? The chip industry is part of the American ecosystem. It's part of American technology leadership. It's part of the AI ecosystem. It's part of AI leadership. Why is it that your policy, your philosophy leads to United States giving up a vast part of the world's
I guess
market?
The claim here is, Alfred Dario had this quote where he said, "It's like Boeing bragging that we're selling North Korea nukes, but the missile casings are made by Boeing, and that's somehow enabling the U.S. technology stack." Like fundamentally, you're giving them this capability.
Comparing AI to anything that you just mentioned is lunacy.
But AI is similar to enriched uranium, right? And then it can have positive uses, it can have negative uses. We still don't want to send enriched uranium to other countries.
Who's sending enriched?
The analogy is enriched uranium is
because
like
it's a lousy analogy. It's an illogical analogy.
If that compute can run a model that can do 0-day exploits against all American software, how is that not a weapon?
First of all, the way to solve that problem.
All right, we're going to end it right there. Let me do a couple things. Interesting. Henson Huang, his wife is white. Yeah, she's a white American woman. I've said many times, Asian women chasing white men, same thing. Asian men love to chase white women, have two mixed kids. So the part about that in terms of America going down, just remember, first, these are globalists. Same thing with Boeing selling out America to China. Same thing, Jensen Huang. He's pushing hard for China. Just remember, though, these globalists that are pushing there, they have an exit strategy. They have an off-ramp. You as a regular American doesn't. Why? Because when China gets powerful and more strong, he can go to China. He can be part of that community, not you. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's kind of the same thing with Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek Ramaswamy, if he became president, he was really hard on China. Guess what he would have done? He would have been so much having favor, grace to India. Our relationship to India would have been so great, corrupt, total corrupt. He would have sold out our country to India because remember, he has an off-ramp. If America falls and India rises, he's moving to India, buddy, because he's Indian, not you. Do you see where this has happened? Anyone not believe me? Guess what? Remember I keep saying, does anyone know the guy named Peter Thiel? Palantir, German guy. Supposedly he's a homosexual too. Anyway, lived in America. He's PayPal. He's part of this tech bro sort of thing. Guess where he's moving to? He's moving to Argentina. Why? I think part of the reason is America, and also he wants to put the whole Palantir, that sort of autocratic system, probably going to try to push it on Argentina. And what does he want? Well, these billionaires now are more powerful than any human being used to be. These people are going to buy countries now. They're going to own their own space. But it's pretty interesting. Hopefully this video is not too slow, but this is the last couple of videos. But this is Peter Thiel, who's, I don't know, some people said he's worth $30 billion. Guess what? He's leaving America.
Temporarily relocated to Argentina. According to the New York Times, Peter Thiel has temporarily relocated to Argentina with his husband, Matt Danzeisen, and their children. They bought a $12 million mansion in Buenos Aires' Barrio Park and enrolled their kids in a local school. Thiel described the move as part of a long-standing hedge against political and economic risk in the United States. This is notable because Thiel co-founded Palantir, a data analytics firm central to U.S. defense and intelligence work. Critics already view the company as emblematic of domestic overreach. Wired notes that its name has become cultural shorthand for dystopian surveillance. Thiel, who was born in Germany and raised in the U.S., has not renounced his American citizenship and keeps more than 99% of his wealth in the United States. However,
well, he doesn't renounce it. He's got plenty of other citizenships. And yeah, the president of Argentina, this guy, I guess Milei, who's also very close with Israel, by the way, but they're just planning their, I'm telling you, at the end of the day, when America tanks, all these billionaires have already had their plan B in place, already established.
The decision to establish residency abroad has raised concerns among those who believe that Palantir uses national security as a justification for the widespread surveillance of Americans. The move to Argentina also carries unavoidable historical echoes, since approximately 9,000 Nazi war criminals fled to South America after World War II, with Argentina being a primary haven. The irony is further emphasized by Chile's German birth.
Well, the one thing I would say is if you're a white guy who's interested in learning Spanish, obviously Spanish is much easier to learn than the Chinese. I think Argentina could be a cool place to go. If I was a Spanish speaker, I think Argentina could be cool. But what I'm trying to say is you are going to start seeing two things happening. One, you're starting to see more high net worth individuals leave America. Why? Because it's expensive. You're starting to see more normal Americans want to leave America, but once you do, you realize it's difficult. But what I'm telling you is you're going to start seeing significant Americans leave America. And who are seeing it in two categories? One, a guy like Peter Thiel. I mean, who's made billions of dollars in America, who says, I love America. Then why are you leaving? Okay, so these are significant points. Or the other would be the same type. Think of politicians or elite business people, but they're going to be fleeing. They're going to be up on charges, and you're going to start seeing the new thing. I'm telling you, you're going to start seeing the new, because the global world order is going to change. You are going to start seeing nations push back on America's extradition treaty. And once they do that, these countries are going to be so appealing to what I said, to that category of, you could say, these rich, elite Americans who are fleeing for corruption. Because, both parties are corrupt. And that's what's happening in the government. Today it's the Democrats, tomorrow it's the Republicans. Everyone's corrupt. It just depends on who's in power. Just like this guy, former mayor Eric Adams. And you're going to all of a sudden see countries that aren't third world, like Africa, but they're going to push back. It could be a country like Spain. It could be something like that. And Spain pushes back and says, we are not going to allow any extradition of foreigners to Americans. Like, we don't have and that is going to be one of the really appetizing points to these countries for these rich, because like I said, you're about to see things that you've never seen before. And you're going to see, like I said, think about Peter Thiel. He's got $30 billion. Why would he leave America? Isn't it? You're going to start seeing it. But I'm talking about people literally fleeing, where there's going to be arrest warrants. Again, think of these as politicians, because what's happening right now with Trump, why don't you see there's major arrests that's happening? That's why nothing's changing, because it happens like this in other autocratic countries. If Trump goes hard and makes arrests, what's going to happen to him and his family? You're going to see this video tomorrow, but I'll probably do it tomorrow. If he makes arrests, what's going to happen when he's out of office? They're going to make arrests. So no one wants to do it. But sooner or later, this system is going to start teetering, and there's going to be a sense of fascism where there's going to be elections suspended, where whoever's in charge is not going to be worried about retribution, and they're going to start throwing the hammer. And they're going to throw the hammer at all these political elites, business elites, and then you're going to see these people flee America. They're like, we're out of here. You're going to see it. I have no doubt it's going to come that way. So anyway, Barcelona looks like London, saying Spain's allowing it. You got it. The problem is this, and I'll leave it here. Where are the absolute areas that if you go, generally speaking, not everything, you're going to live a better life than America? Well, you first got to remember, America is a first-tier country, so it's difficult. It's not like you're leaving Nigeria, where the bar is low. This is America. The bar is set very high. So you have to understand that. This is America, and it's difficult to get higher. What would be the places that are an immediate higher than America, generally speaking? Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, Switzerland. And then we start out there, or also besides Dubai, maybe Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates, stuff like that. What about Western Europe? It's kind of a crapshoot. It depends. Now, some people might like Spain or Italy because it's got a better lifestyle. Maybe you've made your money in America, you want to retire. So it's a give and take. Same thing like Canada. Is Canada better than America? It's hard to say. For every American that says, I hate America, I'm moving to Canada, there could be a Canadian who says the same thing. So this is the point. Same thing with going to New Zealand or Australia. It just depends. Now, once you go to countries that are not in the Western world, risk goes up, but there could be reward. So if a guy, say, moves to Thailand, well, in Thailand, you're not going to get all that Western, you could say, creature comforts. It's not a first-tier country, but there could be other stuff you like. Maybe it's cheaper, it's on the beach, stuff like that. So it just depends. But if you're saying, listen, I want to leave America and I want to make sure, but I got to admit, like even Peter Thiel goes to a place like Argentina, you'd be surprised. Even a lot of these countries that aren't considered a tier 1 country, they're pretty cool. I mean, Buenos Aires is not so bad. And there's places in Asia too. Like even I got to admit, you know what's an up and coming city in Asia, Southeast, is Kuala Lumpur. Because Singapore right now, which is considered the Switzerland of Asia, is getting so priced out. It's getting so expensive. Hong Kong and Singapore are one of the most expensive cities in the world. So what has Kuala Lumpur turned into? It's turned into that cheap alternative Singapore. And I'm very familiar with Kuala Lumpur. So it's not bad. Like if you're an American, and trust me, I know a lot of Americans living all throughout South Asia, you know, Bangkok and whatever, and they like it. But if you're in Kuala Lumpur, you'd be surprised. It's not that bad, but it's so much cheaper than Singapore. So like I said, you'd be surprised when you leave. I think the key to the question is I think before most people left America because it was more out of positive energy. And what do I mean by that? Adventure. That was me. I was like, I believe, even though I said America's going down, I said I'm going out because again, I wasn't fleeing America. I think China is a rising power and I want to go learn. So I think before a lot of people were leaving for positive energy. I think now it could be negative energy where now it is more, this ship is sinking and I need plan B. But like I said, you'd be surprised a lot of these, especially I'm very familiar with Asia, that a lot of these Asian major cities, it's not that bad. But like I said, it all depends. It's like I said, I'm not making any money off this, meaning if you go, I'm not into investment immigration. So the part is if you don't want to leave America, well, then don't leave. You keep there. I'm just telling you, you're going to see more and more Americans leaving. And I don't think people understand these statistics now is crazy. America just surpassed China as the #1 country percentage-wise of people wanting to leave that country. Well, that's totally opposite. Like I said, when I grew up, you know, everyone wanted to come to America. But this trend of Americans wanting to leave more and more. And I think one of the biggest reasons you're going to see too is economic. It's economic. I think a lot of the middle class are going to get wiped out because I think I do believe we're going to go into an entirely new financial system. And those that don't have gold, like it or not, those who don't have crypto, I'm telling you, this system's going to change. And those that are in the top, they're going to make a lot of money. I think those that are in the middle class lower, I think they're going to get wiped out. But that is a major reason, especially what I've seen in Southeast Asia. People have moved their Americans a lot just because of money, because they're on some type of, we'll say you're on a retirement plan where maybe you make $2,000 per month. I mean, I don't know what that'll get you in America. I'm sure if you live in the country in America, I guess you'll get by. $2,000 a month in Southeast Asia, you could live a really quality life. Sure, and you're not going to get white girls, but you get some, you get a lot of Asian girls having fun with you, and you're not paying any money for them. So in terms of the quality of life for $2,000 per month, you could live a nice life. Where I think in America, you're probably going to be regulated into some small town, country town. And you're probably still going to have to budget your money, especially when you think about healthcare and everything like that. You're going to drive a car. You get what I mean. But I think one of the reasons more and more that people are leaving is affordability. People are going to get more and more priced out of America. And trust me, I don't think the Republicans really care. Why? Because just like the Democrats, they love immigration because I think they're communists. But the Republicans like legal immigration because they love cheap labor and they like skilled labor, all to undercut Americans. And we're seeing it more and more. Anyway, let me, if there's any questions, we'll talk. If not, I appreciate your time. But like I said, what you're going to start seeing as the situation in America gets worse and worse, more and more people are going to realize voting is meaningless. it's not meaningless. And then people are like, why am I continuing to pay my taxes? Remember, I keep saying, we're going to end it here, but remember I said the three issues: debt, we're talking government debt; two, we're talking economic inequality; and three, we're talking government corruption. Corruption, debt, and inequality. When this stuff goes, people are like, why am I paying my taxes for this system? And voting is meaningless. You're not going to have many options, but one of the options people are thinking is, I'm out of here. You're going to start seeing it more and more. And I think a lot of the Americans, they get really, really angry. I've seen it. There's some of these people, they're so angry that I left, as if we were like blood brothers, that if I was in America and I said, hey, can I borrow some money? They'd be right there for me. But there's a lot of anger. What do I think it is? It could come down to jealousy, because you're going to start seeing when Americans say, dude, I'm out of here. I'm moving to another country. Traitor. But you don't hear that when they leave the blue states or the red states. Anyway, this is David Baumblatt from Terrabin's Leadership, telling the Patriots, get ready for your plan B. Whether that includes leaving America or not, that's your thing. But I'm telling you, you better start making a plan B. This system is going to get worse. Until then, lead to victory.